I want to thank all of you for being here today. Good afternoon and welcome to our Spring Semester AI Speaker Series. The idea behind this speaker series is to bring thinkers and practitioners from both academia and industry to our campus to generate conversation around AI, focused on both teaching practices and how AI is used in the workplace. For our first speaker, we wanted someone who could provide a big picture view and meaningful context when it came to AI in higher education. And fortunately, we didn't have to look very far. Dr. David Doermann is a professor of Empire Innovation at the University at Buffalo and the interim chair of the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. Prior to arriving at UB, he was a program manager at the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, where he developed, selected, and oversaw research and transition funding in the areas of computer vision, human language technologies, and voice analytics. Dr. Doermann testified at congressional hearings as an expert witness on deepfakes and is frequently called upon for his expertise in AI. While serving on the FACT2 SUNY Task Force for Optimizing AI in Higher Education this past summer, I had the opportunity to hear Dr. Doermann speak on AI and deepfakes during a meeting, and his wealth of knowledge and his perspective on the gravity of these advancements is fascinating. He was an obvious choice for this series, and I'm so glad that he agreed to join us today. Please help me welcome Dr. Doermann to FIT.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. I was able to come on a flight this morning and trudge through your city a little bit here. Actually much further away from Buffalo to here than it is to Washington, D.C., which I was a little surprised when I first went to Buffalo. But yeah, thank you very much. Well, I've been told that I should stay behind the podium. So this table over here, if I start to drift this way, you just go like this. And this table over here, just push me back over that way. And also, Happy New Year to any of you that are celebrating with your friends and family tonight, and enjoy your spring festival. All right, so let me move into here. So I've been working with Jeff for a while on a couple of task force and some things at the state level. If you saw some of the funding that came out in the governor's most recent Empire AI initiative, a lot of that work was done by faculty and staff from all over SUNY, and really set the tone for things. So the one thing I want to say today is I want to have a conversation. I understand I'm the first speaker. I probably won't be able to tell you anything that you don't already know on the pedagogy side. I am a technical researcher by trade. Everything from document analysis, computer vision were my things. Even handwriting analysis. That was one of the early types of AI, back N years ago. But I want to sort of start with a big picture of AI and then talk more about the implications that it has for higher education. Because as we all know, we've seen AI on a political side, we've seen it socially, we've seen it our kids and our grandkids growing up in this new world, and they have tools, they have a different view than we do about those things. I was kind of sounding like my mom now and dad, oh, just wait until you get to that age. And I'm starting to feel it too. So one thing I wanted to start off with is what is AI? Now, this is a hard thing to say, or a hard thing to define, because I guarantee you that no person that knows AI, or no two people that know it, or people that are completely different will come up with the same definition. But the term artificial intelligence was coined first in a workshop proposal at Dartmouth University. And basically, or Dartmouth College at the time, basically what they said is they want to come together. They want to get 10 great minds together for 2 months. And then what they were going to do is they were going to design systems and understand the ability of a computer to mimic all aspects of human intelligence. 2 months, okay? And they thought, if this group is carefully selected, we have our parameters, wow, that would really be cool if we could do that, right? 65 years later, we're no closer to the concept of general intelligence as sort of defined in this proposal than we probably will be another 30 years from now. And that's what's important to remember. When we talk about artificial Christmas trees, we focus on artificial, right? That's the difference between a real Christmas tree and an artificial. When we talk about artificial intelligence, everybody thinks somehow, yeah, it's intelligent. It's robots that are going to take over the world. It's systems that we're not going to be able to control. It's systems that are going to replace our jobs. I heard a great quote from an educator recently when she was asked, well, is AI going to take my job? Are we going to lose our jobs to AI? And her response was, no, you're not going to lose your jobs to AI. But what you might do is lose your job to somebody who knows how to use AI in the right way. So let's take a little bit deeper dive into what is AI. Well, when I ask my kids what AI is, they think of things like this. They think of Roombas, and yeah, there's some intelligence there. If you get the higher end ones, they'll map out your room, they'll find the globs of dog hair, and they'll make sure that they don't run into things, they don't run downstairs, things like that, and even feces if you have it there. Early ones used to smear it all over the room. They've pretty much got that solved. So that's kind of, something that you would think would be a little bit more intelligence than something just running around. But at the other end, we have these Terminator type of robots, and yeah, I would say that that's AI too. But the truth of the matter is, we're nowhere near that. We're way, way over on the side of this, this slide here that talks about narrow intelligence. No matter what you think of, what type of a system that you think of as intelligent, it can't do more than the tasks that it was defined for. You can't ask your Roomba to sing you a song. It can't set the table. It can't do a lot of the types of things that we might think, that AI in the future. It can't drive. Our driverless cars, they can't vacuum your living room. Okay? And it's even worse than that. Your driverless cars can't reason about different systems without help from other systems. So we are really in this part, we're nowhere near general intelligence, a machine that can do all the things that a human can do. And then on the other end, this sort of artificial superintelligence that can think for itself, we're really nowhere near any of that. So that's the one thing that I like to have a discussion with some of my students. Do we think we'll ever be there? I don't think we'll ever be past the middle, anywhere near the middle in my lifetime. You might have known, I sometimes put a slide in about the summers and winters of AI. So in the late 50s, when this started coming, we had the Perceptron. Actually, a company in Buffalo, right near the airport, was the one that implemented the first Perceptrons. A lot of interesting things that were going on. Yeah, we're mimicking the brain, okay? But then we realized that there's not a lot of compute power. We don't have all of those pieces. Then in the 70s, we got expert systems. All of a sudden now we could design systems that could take a specific domain and could really replace a lot of the human intellect that went into these processes, could really streamline some of the things that we do. But then we realized as they had problems, they don't learn. We'd have to give them more rules, and then those would conflict with previous rules. So they're not like humans. They can't learn from their mistakes. They can just add more knowledge, but they can't forget the old stuff. And more recently, when we've had deep learning in the 2010 timeframe, that's really where we are now. And we're still going at an incredible rate here. But I warn people that this is what the emotion was in those two previous AI summers. So how do we actually define AI? Again, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but I like to think of it as the ability for a computer or some kind of computer-assisted device to perform tasks in whatever that way it is associated with intelligent beings. So we think of intelligence as human intelligence, but the truth of the matter is there's a lot of intelligence out there in the animal kingdom that we don't even come close to. We can't do echolocation. Well, some people can. All of those different types of things, all these systems, these biological systems that we don't really understand. But in general, those tasks might include perceiving things, reasoning, data collection, learning, maybe even forgetting or learning better ways to do things, manipulating different types of things. All of these types of things that we think of as things that humans do and do easily. There's also a paradox in artificial intelligence that the things that we do very, very easily are very difficult for computers and AI, and vice versa. So things that computers can do, they can crunch numbers, they can search databases. Those are things that are hard for a human to do in a timely manner. But closing your eyes and having a sense of what's around you, and no matter where you are and where you move in the world, emotions, a sense of consciousness, all of those things are, even vision, right? Those are things, and language. Those are things that we learn, and now they're very easy for us, but that's the hard stuff for computers. So that's what we kind of have a way of looking at this. The other challenge we have is that AI is really changing. And things that I considered AI back in when I was getting my PhD, handwriting analysis, voice recognition, you ask today's generation, and yeah, those are just tools that we use, right? There's nothing special about that. You ask Siri something or you ask Alexa something, they answer you. You go and you search Google, it gives you an answer really quick, right? But what about all of these other things that we see? From everything from shopping to weather prediction, all of these types of things that used to take a real long time and have interpretations, these are tools that are out there, even unlocking your iPhone, right? You can unlock your iPhone in the dark because that system is sensing 3D information and it's recognizing you as a person as a pattern. And that's something that takes some level of intelligence, right? Your vacuum cleaner can't recognize you unless some of this artificial intelligence is built in. And so the definition is there, but there's always going to be risks and rewards, okay? So if you take negative articles about artificial intelligence, you get things like, transparency and security and bias and all of these things that we know as a society, we know as computer science advocates of artificial intelligence are things that we need to try to control. And yes, there are people that are our adversaries, there are bad actors that are using these things for things that are bad, and we tend to hear a lot about that. But there's also an awful lot of positives. All of the things that we can do that we could free up our time to move beyond what we have in terms of our time and the human intellect that goes into a lot of the problems that we're trying to solve. So when I was asked to come here, I had to start thinking a little bit more about higher education. Because higher education, you have faculty, such as myself, you have students, you have administration, and they're all using these types of tools differently. Even just within higher education, we have different cohorts of people in business, we have people that are doing research, we have people that are doing it for analytical reasons. So I tried to come up with some of the ideas that how different groups within education might use these types of technologies. Now, this is in no way, comprehensive, but it gives you an idea of, yeah, some of these things and the way that we use them, they are societal problems, but they aren't necessarily unique to higher education. So faculty using it for curriculum development. I know my wife would go on teachers helping teachers a lot to get ideas. We can use some of these technologies to do that. You used to just go and you talk to your colleagues, right? But now the whole world's your colleagues. How can you get ideas to engage students better? Even automated grading for some types of things, And I'm going to say some things that some people probably think are controversial here, but when used right, and if we put those safeguards in place, there's a lot of positive things that can come out of these things. In the administration, support services, we did a survey of the most common things that our Capon 1 at University at Buffalo get asked. And 75% of the phone calls that they used to get could be answered from an intelligence system that just regurgitates stuff that's already on the web pages. So people are calling, they're asking questions, and it's there. It's just not accessible. Now we're pulling these things together and allowing that type of thing. How do we evaluate a student learning? Can we do this better? Can we do this at a different scale? Even applications. Now you've heard of some of the disasters that different schools have had in terms of automatically analyzing their applications. But all of those have something in common. They drop the human out of the loop. So they said, okay, yep, we're going to have this system. It's going to evaluate our applications. We're going to draw a line. Those are the ones we accept. Those are the ones that we don't. But what happens now if you say, yeah, I want a little more diversity. I want to cater to a particular class of students, first-generation students, all of those types of things. All of these types of things are things that now these tools can help us do. And the students themselves, personal tutoring, personal learning objectives, idea generation, all these types of things that they can use. How can they summarize a different field if they don't have a semester to learn about a particular topic? All of these things are possible in the future if we use artificial intelligence in the right way. But of course, there's also the other side of the coin, right? One of the biggest problems is that our students know a lot more than we do. I do not program anymore. Somebody asked me, came to my office, one of my colleagues, and said, well, I've got this problem, and the GPUs that we're using to train our system isn't responding right. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to have to go and talk to my students about that. I've sort of given up on that level. There's a lot of unknown use parameters. My wife experienced this a lot in the K through 12 education. She's a high school math teacher, and there were groups coming to the university and saying, I've got this tool, it's going to revolutionize education. We don't know what the uses are of that type of technology, including some of the risks that I'll talk about. And we have to change the way that we assess what's going on. I'll talk a little bit more about that. At administration, these are more of societal problems. As you may have heard, a lot of these different types of systems, a lot of these different types of AI systems, they're trained on data. They're trained on data that are out there in the internet. They're trained on Shakespeare, and they're trained on Wikipedia, and they're trained on every different type of data that's out there. So whatever human biases are in there, they're going to show up, and often amplified, because now you're using those tools and people are using them and they're not seeing these biases. Now, in society, we have these biases as well, but they don't get amplified across the entire country, across the entire world like they do. And lack of transparency, that's a huge problem. These are black boxes. You don't disclose what kind of data they were trained on. You don't disclose typically what they are. You just look at the end product. This is the greatest thing for administrators to use to analyze their student population. Okay? So those are some of the problems there. And even for students, they're always tempted by the easiest way to get an assignment done. There are students out there that know that, they have something to learn, but they don't realize in using these tools in the wrong way, it's going to hurt them in the end. And, it can undermine your intellectual growth and really blur what academic integrity is. We've had a lot of students come from different countries. They have different educational systems. These are all challenges that we face when we're using AI. And I look at that and I say, yeah, but wow, there's so much that we can get out of this. I know I've been developing these types of systems for years. We didn't call it artificial intelligence, so some people will say, oh yeah, our planes and things are intelligent. They can land themselves, right? That takes human. Truth of the matter is, almost everything we have in our military, almost everything we have in high tech right now, in terms of automation, 95% of it is engineering. So robots that are putting our cars together, yeah, there might be some inspection of welds and things like that, but actually doing the stuff, those robots are engineered to do the same thing. Very, very narrow, even no intelligence at our thing. But imagine if we can have force multiply the teacher in the classroom and give every student an individualized instruction. Not removing the teachers that's there, but get them to learn what they want. I have graduate students that come to me and they want a project. I'm like, well, what do you like? What are you passionate about? Because I guarantee you they're going to get a lot more out of these systems and their ability to interact with their fellow students, learn if they really are passionate about what they're doing. In K through 12, my wife, she's glad that she retired last year because they just announced a $1 million shortfall, and class sizes are going up to 36 students. And you can't give personalized instruction. So all of these types of things, from guidance, data-driven insights, all of these types of things are great. And promise of AI promises to deliver these things. But it's going to be a bumpy road to get there. So what are we afraid of? Are we afraid of AI in general? I don't think so. Some people are. Some of our thought leaders suggested, oh yeah, we need 6 months to pause AI. The only reason they want to do that is so they can get ahead of their competitors. I guarantee it. The genie is out of the bottle with AI, and it's not going back in. We are raising our children. We are teaching our students. They are going to be living in an AI world, no matter what type of construction job they have, from nuclear scientists all the way down to students that are working blue-collar jobs. They are going to have to deal with an AI world. They are in some sense already, right? Your smartphone, voice recognition, all those types of things. But what we have to remember is that all technology introduces some piece of uncertainty. And so one of the examples that I use is weaving machines. Didn't even think about it when I'm coming here, right? But when those things were introduced as part of the mechanical revolution, everybody was saying, oh yeah, now all of these textile manufacturers and stuff, all these people are going to be out of work and things like that. Well, some of you probably teach this. Maybe this isn't accurate, but this is my interpretation of it. What happened was, basically, these machines allowed the industry to make a lot more fabric, a lot cheaper, and then not only were the rich people have one or two really fancy outfits, but the common man had outfits, and they could sell them. And so the whole workforce moved on to a different piece, and the industry actually grew. So for education, it's not just AI. It's a very small or a very compact piece of AI called generative AI. Generative AI and the tools that it's creating and the speed at which it's happening, that's new. We look at, over the past, I was at a DARPA meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they wanted to compare, the question was, what is technology going to look like in 2035? So that's, 18 years from now, 17 years from now, 16 now, years from now. No, 11, I don't do math very well. They shouldn't have introduced calculators, because I would have been able to do that. And so people said, okay, well, let's look back 10 or 11 years and see what the difference was. No, we got to look back 20, 30 years, because what's going to happen in the next 10 years is going to equal what's happened in the last 30 years. And why are we scared about generative AI? Does anybody know what generative AI is? It generates stuff, right? And what is that? That's sort of the top of the traditional education pyramid of creation. Now we're at the point where, yeah, these systems are creating stuff. Well, that's the ultimate part, right? That's what we're trying to teach our students to be able to do, to be creative, to be able to have these insights into, what the things are that we want at the top of this education. So what I want to do now, for the first part of this, is educate you a little bit about generative AI. And so I'm not going to get into the details, because I don't know exactly what some of you know, some of you don't know. But I'll give you some insight into just the fact that it's not magic, that these are things that really, really smart people that knew the math, the fact that we have very large compute infrastructures now that are relatively cheap to what they used to be. We have high-speed internet, and we have lots and lots of data coming together. So, believe it or not, the first generative network was introduced in a paper in 2014. This picture here, up in the upper left-hand corner, was the first face that was generated. That person, that face, does not exist. I'm not going to get into the technical details, but here's the basic idea. If any of you saw that movie, A Beautiful Mind, Nash had his theory that he got his, one of the parts of the theory that he got his Nobel Prize for was Nash equilibrium. And the idea there is that you can get in a two-player system, you can get to a point where you learn from the other side of your adversary to a point where you're both happy with the outcome. And the idea there is that you're learning from the other side, or you're giving a little bit, and this turned out to be an incredible economic and, in general, a theory that focused on, how do we compromise? How do we come to a place where we're both happy? So, I give the example in my class of telling somebody how to draw a letter 0, okay, without showing them. I'm not going to show them what a 0 looks like. I'm not going to describe it. So what they're going to do is they're going to put some random dots on the page. Imagine, it's hard to do, but imagine you have completely random information. That's what this random latent vector means down at the bottom here on the left. And so you have two networks. One's a discriminator, and one is a generator. So the generator starts off by just random image, okay? Black and white dots all over the place. No rhyme or reason to it. And the other side, the discriminator network, it knows what the difference between a 0 and a 1 is. It knows what the difference between a zebra and not a zebra is, because we have large, deep learning systems that can do that kind of stuff now, right? You Google Photos, it's labeling all your cats and your dogs and even recognizing a particular dog and cat, all that kind of stuff, right? Well, this is what's happening. At billions and billions of operations, the generator network is generating some random stuff. The discriminator network is saying, yes, no, okay, yes, that's a zebra. Yes, that's a 0, that's a dog, whatever it's learned to discriminate. Or no, it's not. And what it does when it says it not, it gives a little bit of information. So think of this huge, multi-dimensional, millions of parameter space, and it's giving a little bit gradients, almost like hot or colder, right? It's telling you, go that way a little bit, go that way a little bit. But over an incredible number of operations. And eventually, it will be able to tell what a human looks like. It will be able to say, okay, this picture of a horse here, what do I have to change to fool the discriminator to make it look like a zebra? Well, it doesn't have to change the background or the sky or the grass. It doesn't even have to change that it has 4 legs or that it has a mane or it has a tail, right? All it has to do is change that it has stripes. And these systems can learn how to do that. And that was in 2014. If you look at the progression of quality of the images, the ones on the top there were trained on a database called Celebrity DB. It's basically, they mined images of celebrities from the internet. That's why they kind of look like celebrities. But now down on the bottom, by 2022, we have very high resolution. We can generate pictures. These people don't exist. You can go to a website. These cats don't exist. You can have systems that will go back and forth between a zebra and a horse. You can make an image that's of a flower look like a Cézanne or a Monet, just by training these discriminator functions. So that alone is pretty scary, right? But it wasn't until 2017 that the problems really started to raise their head. So you might have heard of the thing called deepfakes. If you haven't, I'd be surprised. But the basic idea here is you take a deep neural network and you learn what somebody looks like, okay? And at the time, you needed a lot of images, but actors like, who's this guy? Tom Cruise, right? Lots of pictures on the internet of that, right? And then you would take a video and you would simply learn how to project Tom Cruise's face onto the face of the person in the video. You might have heard of Taylor Swift being challenged by some of the ones that came out. And that was really the first time when this technology was used in a very negative way. It was used primarily for revenge porn type of applications where women, men, their faces were being put on these pornographic videos and released into the public. And because people didn't know these things could be done, they believed it. So my program at DARPA the tagline was, is seeing believing? Because we used to think that, right? If you saw it, yeah, you never believe anything that people say on the internet, but if you saw something, especially if you saw a video of it, that's real. So now it's kind of jumped to the point where it's everything that's related to AI-generated media. They call it deepfakes, but this is where it all started. And now we have audio cloning. We have the ability to do personalized text-to-speech. One of the early ones was Obama's. But the interesting thing is, or the scary thing is, there's been a drastic reduction in the amount of data that it takes to do this. You can now take 3 seconds of somebody's voice and generate a realistic voice print of that person. So if the next time you get a robocall and doesn't sound like anybody's at the other end of the line, and you say, hello, is there anybody there? By that time, they have enough data on you to be able to generate a voice that, in reasonable circumstances, can fool even people that you know. And the other scary thing is that it's all available in freeware. Anybody with a laptop can download this software and do this kind of thing. You don't need to be a computer scientist. You don't need to even have the technology there. You can do these types of things. I had my freshman class try this with, not pornography, made sure they weren't doing that, but with you can dance videos. So basically taking this and having either ballet dancer, hip hop, whatever kind of dancing they want, they took a video and they put their own face on it. And it was incredible how easy it was for them to do. And it's very simple to do this training.
I'm happy to share with you a small announcement about a cool startup called Library. They launched today their website where you can create a digital copy of your voice. They only need you to record 1 minute of audio. This is just the beginning, and they are working hard to improve the results.
Now it's down to seconds.
They want to use this
I want to take another example here. This is a example, and obviously the person up in the upper corner is the person that's talking. This was a United Nations demo, and this is how easy it is to be able to do these types of things.
Before you, not as an expert, but as a concerned citizen.
One of the 400,000 people who marched in the streets of New York on Sunday,
and the billions of others around the world who want to solve our climate crisis.
As an actor, I pretend for a living. I play fictitious characters, often solving fictitious problems.
I believe that mankind has looked at climate change in that same way, as if it were fiction.
As if pretending that climate change wasn't real would somehow make it go away.
I mean, this can all
But
be
I think we
done
all know
on
better
your-
than that now.
On your computer very easily. Images, artwork, probably textiles, probably design can be done with some of these types of things. I don't know. I've never tried it with that. But if you remember the corgi living in a sushi doghouse or the Pope in a puffer coat, all these things are easily available. They're now in subscription models, but you can pay a few dollars a month and you can use these types of things. You can generate or generate this kind of art. But a lot of this stuff is held within the very biggest companies. Okay, but it's coming. We're going to have access to it. And people are taking this and they're developing a lot of different use cases for this. Puppeteering is a new thing. There are companies out there that are generating basically Zoom-type videos using very sophisticated algorithms that train on a lot of data so that in real time you can move your head around and you can talk and it looks like it's somebody else. So they're doing in real time, they're taking this person, they're doing their facial expressions, they're making it look like somebody else. So imagine a call center now where you zoom into a doctor and you're a young teenager, maybe you would be more interested in having same gender doctor with approximately, some reasonable age and not, an 80-year-old man doing your annual physical over the, or answering your questions. For therapy, all of these types of things. These types of things are coming, and it's scary. And we don't really have fully synthetic media right now. We can't generate a movie, but if somebody passes away, if somebody decides they don't want to remake part of a film, AI can do this. And you might know that the latest contract dispute with Hollywood, this was a huge part of it. How people control their own likeness for just these types of things in AI. And the real concern here is that we can do this in all modalities. So you might have heard a couple of weeks ago that a CFO was cloned and got somebody to, it wasn't just an audio fake. The audio fake happened a few years ago and the company lost a lot of money. This was an actual Zoom session. People that he thought he knew on Zoom, maybe not the perfect quality, they were overseas, but talking to them, answering their questions in real time, and he wound up transferring money to a bank account that was not his company. And these are people that maybe he didn't work with every day, but he thought he knew. And that was done in real time and real interactive. So these types of things, unfortunately, we're hearing about more of the bad than we do good. Why? Because that's the shocking part. And news, they want their clicks, they want their viewers, right? But there's a lot of positive things, right? Digital marketing, entertainment, obviously, area, education, which we're going to talk more about today, counseling, chatbots, all of these sorts of things. So many positive things. So why are we so worried? Why are we so concerned about this? Well, in November of 2022, OpenAI releases the ChatGPT. And what happened? Well, the education world panicked. All the things, I did a search, and about 80% of the articles that came out during that time were about how we need to ban AI in the classroom. We need to stop this in its tracks. We can't let students use this technology. We need to shut it off and shut it down. Calling on local governments to ban it, internet providers to provide filters so that people can't use this. But there's so much positive. Why is this such a big deal? Why are we concerned? Well, the one thing is, I think that we don't know what's behind the curtain. We don't understand it. And when we see something come out like this, we tend to panic. In 1959, the year DARPA was established, the reason that they did that was because the average person could look up in the sky. I wasn't around quite then. I don't know, maybe Jeff was, right? Did you see Sputnik flying over? Yeah. And people were like, wow, is this thing watching us? So DARPA was set up to prevent strategic surprise. And when we're surprised by things, I mean, personally, we knew that you could extend the large models, the deep learning models to this scale, but why would anybody ever pay $50 million plus $50 million of hardware to be able to train one of these things? And it was ChatGPT 3 version of it. So we knew it could happen, but why would anybody do it? And then when we saw what it could do, we realized, yeah, we need to start educating the world about these things. So I'm going to educate you a little bit, okay? GPT. Chat is part of the name, but GPT is the core. That's the technology. That's the technology that's behind there. It's called Generative Pre-trained Transformers. It's an architecture that can generate human-like text, but it's trained on so much data that the things that we see are intelligent are sort of an artifact of that process. The only thing that it is designed to do is generate the next word in a sequence. You have some text that you give it, maybe you have a question. It is generating, probabilistically, the most likely thing in the next sentence, in the next word in the sentence. Okay, think about that, okay? It's not taking and saying, okay, give me an article about unicorns. It's not saying, okay, well, I should cover this point and that point and that point, and maybe if I, introduce this here, the reader will be more likely to continue reading, and all of the things that I'm sure a lot of you do that are teaching literature courses and all the things that I did really bad in school, right? But it's not. It's just a process that's trying to generate these next words. The scary thing is ChatGPT 3, which is that second ball from the left, is the size of the parameter space that we had, 175 million parameters. 1.75 billion parameters in GPT-4. And who knows how big that's going to get. But it's not sustainable. Jeff and I were talking about Moore's Law earlier. It's not going to be able to continue like that. The reason is because we basically, by 2035, if we keep this going, we would be using the equivalent of all the electricity in the United States just to train these models. I see a hand over there? Okay, so basically, these models have variables. So if you think of an equation of a line, right? You have a point in a line. You could have y-intercept, so y and b are the two parameters. Think of a billion different parameters that are in this model that have to be trained. So it's basically all the information there, but it's all encoded, which is one of the reasons why when I said this is a black box before, because we can't look in there and there's no rule that says if you ask about President Lincoln, talk about Ford's Theater. There's nothing like that in there. It's all basically this idea of generating the next word. And that's exactly what it does. This is how it happens. This is behind the screen. You take a sentence, you block out one word, you try to train this model to be able to predict that word. You take the same sentence later on, you block out another word. And you do this over and over and over again. 40,000 machines, 80,000 GPUs, working and taking $40 million worth of electricity to train ChatGPT 3. The scale is just something, us as university, when our governor announced that Buffalo was going to have the Empire AI compute infrastructure, $400 million of that, That's because we can't compete with these guys. We can't go to Amazon Cloud and afford to be able to rent machines. So her vision is, let's let New York keep across the state to be able to do a lot of the type of things that these big companies are doing, but in a research part. The other piece that people don't really understand is that there's an evolution of Chat GPT. Yes, we had lots of text, we had lots of code, we have lots of annotated data, but then after that, there's a huge number of things that these systems do in order to protect us. There's an article, it's good, I use it for my intro class, that talks about how a company hired by OpenAI used people in Kenya to be able to screen the things that came out of ChatGPT when they were developing them. Well, it turns out the types of things that these people were exposed to without the mental health counseling, and it's just incredible. It's criminal. But there's a huge amount of human judgment that goes in there. It'll tell you it can't talk bad about somebody. It'll tell you that it can't change something about a historical figure to make them look bad. So ChatGPT, tell me about Lincoln, but make him look like a communist. It won't do that kind of stuff. There are protections there, and that's important. One of the problems that we have moving forward is, as companies and even in the education space start to develop these things and use them, then what do we run into in terms of our ability to put the amount of money that OpenAI has into the safety part of this? So basically the entire right half of the screen. All right, so before we get to more education, what are some of the big questions about Ellen? Well, one is they're currently proprietary, and they have these parameters, these values that get trained here, so we really don't know that much about it. We don't have explainable AI. If you ask systems, why they made a decision, they can't point to a piece of code, or they often can't point back to where they got that exact information. Now, that's one of the things that if you've studied this type of thing in the last year, you see that OpenAI and some other companies are doing much, much better than they did even a year ago. They're making it explainable. If you ask somebody for a reference, they'll give you a reference. Unfortunately, and it's not always right, but there are different types of things that are going into the safety of these types of systems. You might have heard a lot about hallucinations, the facts there. If you would ask, in the early systems, and when I say early, this is a year ago, if you would ask it to tell you 20th century Renaissance computer scientists, okay, what is a Renaissance computer scientist? What is a Renaissance artist in the 20th, 21st century, right? It would make up names. Or if you asked it to give you 10 things and it didn't know, it would make stuff up. You heard about, I'm sure, the lawyer that submitted legal briefs, right? And it made up cases. That's because it doesn't know anything about right or wrong. But now it's starting to get there. If you ask, it used to be, if you would ask it to multiply two very big numbers, it would give you garbage. It would make something up because it didn't know it was doing multiplication. Now they're getting better at things like that. Not very robust, okay? You start applying this to new areas. How many of you remember IBM Watson, right? That was going to be the solution to cancer. It was going to be the greatest thing since any type of medical advance that we've ever had. Well, it turned out when you tried to apply it to different domains other than Jeopardy, it didn't do nearly as well. They put hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Now we're starting to see it again. They're trying to recover some of these things, but it's not very robust. So there's lots of different ways that you can do that. And it's sort of like the calculator. I like to use that because, my wife was a math teacher. When there was people aren't going to be able to add 2 + 2 anymore. They're going to rely completely on keep the calculators out of the classroom. It's basically the same thing here. Our students need to know when something smells fishy and be able to figure it out on their own. And of course, societal impacts, the job loss. I don't remember if I said this at the beginning of the talk, but another quote that I like is about the jobs. You know, you're not going to necessarily lose your job to AI, but you're going to lose it to somebody that knows how to use AI. All right, so why are we concerned in higher education, right? You know, we can use the analytics, we can do those things. Yes, there's some bad things, there's some good things. Students are going to use this when they graduate anyway. So why did we have all these uproars? Why did, you know, a year ago? Why did we have that? There, yes, I want to answer. Yeah, I heard it back here. Yeah.
Because I think I was afraid of getting a ChatGPT essay for the final.
Right. They can cheat, right? We're worried about that. And I started thinking about that. I started thinking about, you know, what does that mean? But, you know, we're upsetting what the norm is, right? We know how to do learning outcomes. We know how to teach. We know how to assess, right? We know how to do that. But maybe we don't in an AI world. When they have access to these things that can actually create stuff. And when I say we, I mean me, because I was not trained. Most PhDs in the scientific field don't get the pedagogy that we really should have. My wife taught me more things because when she went through and got her degree in secondary education and then went on for advanced degrees in math and math education, she got those courses. Most of us don't, unless you're teaching it. So I was like looking for a solution to these kinds of things, and I realized after I sort of read things about what some of the issues are here, but I realized, you know, that often we're assessing the end product. I looked up on my wall. There's something that I've had up on my wall for a long time, and something that I remembered, and that was our President Eisenhower saying, plans are nothing, planning is everything, right? Have anybody heard of that before? That's an incredible forward thinking, and he talked about this. And so what I did is I went and I said, okay, I want to make sure that I have that quote exactly right, because I didn't want to give you any false information here, any misinformation. So I went to my go-to reference, right? ChatGPT. So let's see what happens. I went to ChatGPT and I typed in this sentence here, and it said, what is Eisenhower's quote on planning? And it gave me a nice, comprehensive piece of text there, but it's not what I had as the quote. I'm like, what's going on here? Did somebody paraphrase it? Because if you look and you do search for planning is plans are nothing, planning is everything, you get lots of memes with Eisenhower's face and that quote. So I said, oh, okay, let's go back to what we can really trust, and that's Google, right? So let's go back to Google. And what I went and I said, okay, I'm going to have to change my quote there, but now I'm going to go back to Google and I'm going to say, okay,
I tell a story to illustrate the truth of a statement I heard long ago in the Army. Plans are worthless, but planning is everything.
Oh, so now we have the right answer, right? Because that's his voice, and it came from the Presidential Library, and it gives a direct reference to something that can't be wrong, right? Well, one of the projects, if anybody knows Brown versus the Board of Education, I think it's the 50th anniversary coming up this year. So one of the things that a local library, law school library, approached us about is, can we recreate the voices of some of these famous members of the Supreme Court reading the documents, even though they never read them in public? And so we had a project last semester to do that. So now I'm like, well, yeah, I guess that was him. I assume it was, because that's a trusted source. But the same way, we can say, yeah, maybe that's not so much the case anymore. All right, so what I really have up on my wall is this. This is to scare my students. And I honestly have this, okay? So papers are nothing, research is everything, because I want them to know. And actually, one of the reasons I left the University of Maryland is because all the students were, at the time, interested in deep learning, but all they were doing is changing the parameters, the number of epochs, the number of layers in these networks, all of these things. And they thought that was research, and it really wasn't. All right, so some things to think about. First of all, you need to learn and help yourself first before you can help other people. And I thought about this when I was flying up today and they were talking about putting your mask on before helping somebody else. It's really true. We panicked because we knew nothing about how to use generative AI in the classroom. We need to be exceedingly clear about what our expectations are, okay? If we want to tell them that they can't use these tools, we have to be 100% clear on every assignment exactly what we want to let them do and what we don't. We have to make it clear what is academic integrity violations. We have to have these discussions. But at the same time, we also owe it to our students to help them learn how to use these tools if we feel comfortable doing it. Now you might say, oh yeah, computer science, what is that? There are code writers out there. They can write code for really complex stuff. We can have type checking. We can have code checking. So it's not just literature, English literature. It's not, writing letters. It's not writing things. One of the best things, it was actually the same woman that was saying about your jobs. She said she uses AI in kindergarten and first grade. I was like, what? Used AI in first grade and kindergarten? Well, how many of you ever remember your kids or you having, what did I do on my summer vacation? Right? Early type of a writing assignment, right? So what she did was she says, okay, sit at your table, look out the window, and describe what you see. And you have students write all that stuff down. Then she would take that and put that into one of these generative image models and say, okay, the AI thinks that you're describing this. How can you change what you wrote to tell through your writing exactly what you see or do a better job? Is this really what you meant? Because that's what, that's what the AI thinks that it is. I thought that was a really clever thing to do. So there's a lot of things we can try. We can change how we do assessment, okay? And I don't want to say anything controversial here, but the truth, maybe you do. Maybe all of you assess the process and not the end product and do it along the way and have oral pieces. I tried that, at least in my master's class. They just got up there and read stuff. So I got to figure out how to get that type of thing done. Assess more frequently at different stages. Well, and maybe we can even have AI help us do that types of assessment. If we're going to let them use generative models, there's a number of different things, and I hope to learn from you. I hope to learn from everybody I get to talk to about different ways of doing all of this type of stuff. If we have generative models, could we consider, asking them for the original prompt that went in? Prompt, by the way, is basically what you're asking ChatGPT. So there's ways to say, okay, I want something formatted in this way, and I want you to talk about this, and then you give it a prompt, and then it gives you the result. So ask them for the original prompt. How much thought went into that if they're going to be able to use this? If they're going to take this and then they're going to modify it, have them do it in Word or something with a way to edit this. Have them track what their process, what their thought process was when they actually went and changed something. Okay? In math, in high school, what? Showing your work, right? They've always required that kind of thing so that you know the process. At least from my point of view, I didn't always do that. I didn't do that for programming assignments. I would say, okay, you got 3 pictures here. You're going to use homographies to join them into a stitched image. And we could look at the code and see how they did it. But they could go online and get that stuff. Now they can have ChatGPT be able to generate that type of stuff. Peer assessment, lots of things, okay? We shouldn't be scared to try different things because there's some things that we need to really consider. Our students are going to use this stuff. They're going to use it in every discipline, and they're going to use it in different ways in different discipline. We should be showing them how we're making use of AI to make them feel comfortable, develop an environment that we are using it. We should be in a place where we give students suggestions on how to use this. They can generate flashcards with AI, with these ChatGPT. They can do synthesis. They can get critical think. How could I write this better? How could I make this more impactful? I'm trying to convince somebody that's a very strong, male role model how to do something. I'm trying to convince a 5-year-old. How do I do these types of things? How do I change what my approach is to this? Because that's where they're going to learn as well. We should teach prompt engineering, how to write the right types of prompts. And of course, we have to learn it ourselves first. And we can do things like trying to suggest that they do these things in different media, different forms. It's, the image stuff is not nearly as advanced as the text in terms of fluency and all of those types of things. So they'd have a tough time generating any of the types of things that I saw on the walls coming over here. But here's the one thing, that if you're going to do anything, that every student should get out of any type of understanding of these generative models. Always stress the safety. I had breakfast with my daughter at the Dunkin' Donuts across the street here today. She got a memo last week basically saying, okay, people, stop using ChatGPT to generate meeting minutes for projects that are confidential or projects that are valuable to our company. Why? You think these people, the $20 a month that it costs to sign up for ChatGPT 4, you think they're making any money on that? No. They're making money when you say, okay, ChatGPT, you're so smart. Here's my income. Here's how much taxes I paid last year. Here's my social security number. Here's when I want to retire. When can I? Or here's my plans for making money, my salary. When can I retire? They can mine all of that information. Anything you type into that system, you have to be careful. And you just don't think about it sometimes, Yeah, I've got a document here. It's all, text with words spelled wrong, and some are in 1/10, another. Just throw it in there and let ChatGPT provide you the minutes, right? Well, you just gave away a bunch of company secrets, chances are. All right, so I'm going to jump through these last things that are just really quick. Actually, I'll jump through these. These are things that we talked about: lack of transparency, bias, intellectual property. These are all things that are problems that we're working on, but you in a classroom aren't going to be worried about these types of things. The thing that I want to end up with here is something that I think is really great that New York State did. So they just came out with their acceptable use of artificial intelligence technologies. And they're not saying you can't use artificial intelligence, but what they did at the very back, it's only an 8-page memo, but what they did at the very back is they put examples of what good things to do. So they had things like this, that you can use AI to provide insights, but it has to be well-tested system. It has to be tested in your domain. And you can't use it to make decisions without that testing, and you can't make it by putting in personally identifiable information. All right? That's something you would normally just think, yeah, I mean, you're not going to go tell your competitor personal information, but these types of systems, they're gathering that kind of stuff. Content generation, you have to have verified data, and you have to have a human. It has to be vetted data. If you start putting in biased data, you're going to get biases out on the other end. When you're talking about analysis, you have to have a human there. You can detect anomalies, but you can't do it without human oversight. And these are all just good practices. If you have clearly labeled things, if you have a chatbot, you have to say, I am a chatbot at the beginning, and you have to do it in every kinds of ADA type of way of doing it. These robocalls that are coming through, illegal now. These types of things should be, and then if you get transferred to a human, they should tell you they're a human. So you know what you're dealing with. So where do we go from here? Well, I think the biggest thing is we have to learn the pros and cons ourselves. And that is often domain specific. I know it's going to be very different in a fashion institute than it's going to be in a computer science and engineering department. It's going to be very different in New York City than it's going to be in halfway across the Midwest here to Buffalo, right? We have to teach these best practices, and we have to teach it over and over and over again. We can't let our students be afraid because they're going to have to use it. Our employers are going to demand it, I guarantee it. And we have to regulate, and that type of thing is happening. Schumer's had things. I've testified in front of Congress. The White House has released ways, and they're simple at this level. They're simple things. Okay, so I think I'm going to end there. Thank you very much for your attention. I'd be happy to answer any questions and continue the conversation. Apparently, he used it many times throughout his career. And so the first one I had was wrong because he said useless instead of our difference, but they're worthless. And yeah, so apparently he used it in different contexts. So you could find different ones, but who knows? Most of the things aren't as reliable as something from the Library of Congress or his library.
Okay, I've got the mic. There might not be enough time for this, but my concern is how can we tell what is true? Will the students be able to tell what is true and does it matter? And also, what about originality? Is that no longer a matter? This is my greatest concern.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so yes, so can faculty tell what's right or not? Can they tell what's generated? The answer is no. There is really a solution to this, which is basically ChatGPT could provide a thing that it stores absolutely I'm sure it's doing it anyway. It could store everything that you have, and you could generate, you could find out whether somebody had queried and generated some piece of text. But if you're talking about truth in general, how do we do it now? We go to some place that we trust. We go to multiple sources to try to verify these things. But the truth of the matter is the scale at which this is happening now, it's harder and harder to tell, what's the truth in anything that people say and people do, what we see, what we hear. That's huge. And the second part of your question, that actually came up in a discussion. So one of the things as chair of the department, I decided, well, we're going to refresh the third floor of Davis Hall, make it look like a more computer science. And so I said, well, one of the things that we should do for the students is we should have them be able to use AI to generate poems, sayings, images, landscapes, whatever, that represent the diversity of computer science in Buffalo. I had a couple, and I hadn't even thought about this. I got an earful, actually a text chat, we use a matrix server, because we have faculty that are very, very concerned about how we compensate everybody that has contributed to the vast resources that went into training these things. And I think of it as, well, it's on the internet, so it's free, but that's not necessarily the case. So when you're saying, originality, people have been saying for decades that everything is only a derivative of something else. We learn, we have our whole history, and whatever we create is just a product of some combination of all those things that we've already learned. And so I don't know. I appreciate now more after that whole discussion about the value of what went into these systems and the data that it was trained on. I mean, we don't have control over a lot of our data. Once it gets out there, they use it for research purposes. We don't control our own data, and we certainly don't control a lot of the things that go into our creative, our creations.
So you're suggesting that it's just part of the normal process?
No. Yes, I'm saying it's part of the process, but I'm not saying it's right. I'm definitely not saying it's right. Well, actually, one of the things that we had at DARPA is we were trying to do this strategic surprise thing and basically say, okay, what's the way out thing that, probably will never happen. But one of the things was, can we create a data exchange so that everything that you own, everything that you create is yours, and there's an exchange out there that compensates you for your DNA that we send off to 23andMe and let them use for free, basically, right? All the information that we put into H&R Block's things, even if it's statistical, it's still very valuable to them.
David, we have
Yes.
one over here, but just quickly, because we're running low on time. Brian, did you want to say?
Yeah, we're running low on time. Grace is coming around the room with a QR code and a tiny URL with a brief exit survey. So if you can do that for us, that would be great. It's going to help in our grant reporting. It's just to let us know what kinds of classes you're teaching, but also give us a little bit of feedback about the program today and your thoughts on AI in general. But I'm going to hand it back over to Dave to keep taking questions.
Yeah.
You mentioned early on about the bias, the inherent bias that was baked into AI and how it's amplified by the continued use of AI. And I think there was a slide that you skipped over a little bit, but I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how data bias factors in, and if there's anything that's being done to avoid that, or if it's just going to continue to get worse over time.
Yeah, well, obviously, we're trying, or the community is trying to do that. So the problem with bias, again, is you have things in your data, whether it's sampling bias, where you got the data, how much voice, how much volume of data you have on a particular topic, all of those sorts of things. So the challenges and the things that we see have been big things in if you look for bias in AI. There was a big study on recidivism, and it was taking and saying, even black individuals with, that did minor things like stealing bikes were at a much higher rate for reoccurring criminal activity than somebody that's been a drug dealer or a drunk driver who might be white and wealthy 4 or 5 times. And these examples are there, and we don't necessarily have a way to ensure that they're not there. But what IBM and a number of different organizations are doing are trying to develop tools to detect these types of things, to be able to use good science to be able to detect. Because one of the biggest problems that we have is when somebody uses a tool, they don't.
What would be the metrics for good science?
So the types of, well, first of all, the problem is that people use these systems in unexplained ways. But I'm not a good statistician, but you can divide the data in certain ways and rerun queries to see if you have these types of biases there. So statistical, different types of norms. So I don't know exactly what the things are, but IBM is definitely one of the leaders in developing these public tools for identifying bias. Another big example was Amazon. Amazon is one of the biggest employers. They had developed a tool that was going through and trying to rate resumes. And they were pulling out all of the stuff, the pronouns, the names, so you shouldn't be able to tell, any type of bias there. Well, they were hiring in the computer science field, and things like, their extracurricular activities were volleyball, and they went to swimming in certain ways, certain types of things, diving, and it was biased against women. And they wound up throwing the whole system out. Couldn't be fixed. They couldn't figure out how to fix those types of things. Because as soon as you put in rules, then you're introducing biases in different ways. The other problem with bias in general is there's bias, but every time you make a decision, there's a difference in the statistics, right? You pick something over something else because it shows better results, right? So that's sort of a bias, but it's not the bad bias that we're thinking about. And so depending on what you use, it's a real challenge. So what we have to do is we have to make sure that people understand the data and can compensate for those biases. But it's a very time and costly process to be able to do that. It's a real challenge. Okay.
Hi, Dave.
Hi.
My name's Camila Tibbetts. I am a new part-time faculty along with Jillian, and we're in the communication and marketing department. So I just wanted to say that for context in terms of the type of questions that are being asked, especially with new faculty as we come into a new culture and environment. So I really was thinking about what you were saying about prompt engineering, because from where I sit, to be critical and to ask the right questions, then you can ask critical prompt questions. So for example, I teach digital internet marketing, right? And last week I taught on user stories and customer personas. So if I wanted to assess myself, right, as a teacher, I would do the syllabus, I would give them the lecture, and then I would engage with them, and then next steps would be, okay, let's do a application of that would be pull out ChatGPT and let's write some prompts based on user stories and customer personas. So to me, two things are happening. I wanted to get your opinion on this. One, I'm assessing, right, my lecture and my pedagogy of how I'm teaching them, and their questions are telling me, the questions that they're giving back are telling me how critical they're thinking about it, as well as what they'll produce. So I just wanted to talk more about, because we're here about education, how we can use prompt engineering and questions on prompt engineering. And my second question is, because this was voluntary, how do we as educators go back to our departments, especially if we're new, and kind of have constructive conversations around what you've just shared?
Yeah, I mean, we had a workshop, and I'm kind of answering the second part first. We had a workshop in July. Wasn't an ideal time for faculty, but we did it anyway. I learned more from the people from the Information Science School, the Graduate School of Education, the librarian that was there, all of these people than I ever thought that I would. And I'm sure I would have from any of my colleagues there. So this type of thing and how you do that, how you would do that with a student is great. I'm glad to see that you're doing these types of things. So in terms of prompt engineering, yeah, it's like how to ask the right questions to get the answers that you want. And it's not just the words that you type in, but it's how you set the context. Because if you just ask a very specific question, chances are you'll get an answer that's the same one that you would get if you typed it into Google, right? But if you're asking it to create something new in the sense that you want to understand how effective something is, you have to set the context for that. You have to say what kind of teacher you are, what kind of environment you're in. I have students that are first generation in this field. They're very interested in new types of technology. Okay, what kinds of activities can and do that so that you set the whole context, just like you would if you were talking to one of your colleagues. And again, I'm not saying you're always going to get the right answer, because you have to critically evaluate that in the end. But at least, it might be, you might get the wrong answer, but then you might go, aha, maybe just by telling them, you're telling the system, you're giving out and you're forcing yourself to maybe even answer some of your own questions. And I think that's a very valuable piece too. Even if, it's just almost like, talking to a picture on the wall, you talk through it and you realize, oh yeah, I don't know that as well as I should. Hi.
So ChatGPT has come up a lot as a tool. Sorry, I could just talk really loud.
They're recording it, that's why she said,
got it. Okay. So ChatGPT came up a lot in this presentation. Are there any other applications or platforms that you would suggest as like a good tool in the classroom? For some context as well, I'm in the business department, so we have students that are going to have to work with pricing algorithms next year when they graduate, or generating copy for products, and a lot of those programs seem to be proprietary to the companies that they end up working for.
Absolutely.
So I'm just wondering if there's anything that you think is good.
Well, I mean, these general models that they have, all of the big companies have have these things. So I understand that you're a Google shop here. So there's Bard, which is the large language model for Google. I found out that you can tie it into Google Sheets, and so you could say, you know, summarize this set of things. Generate me a graph of the responses that faculty had to this particular candidate. All of those sorts of things. So those, you know, that's sort of at the tool level. But you're absolutely right. Anything that's, you know, specifically finance or specifically, you know, programming, things like that, they tend to be black boxes and proprietary. They won't even tell you what kind of data that they're trained on, and that's scary too. And you know, I guarantee you, if you look through the fine print, they're telling you they're going to take your data and use it however they want. Hi. Yeah, go ahead. Thanks.
Is this working?
Yep.
In your experience teaching students how to use these AI tools responsibly, and also working with faculty to educate their students on the responsible use of AI, have you heard any anecdotes or any sort of stories about how student work has changed or improved? Or have you noticed something about the way your students' work has adapted as a result of these guardrails?
Yeah, I was going to give you some of the bad examples, but yeah. So all right. So some of the good ones. Yes, I think once students, you know, I always tell people, and you can cut this part out of the recording, but I tell everybody, my wife is the only reason my kids made it to age 18, because she was just so level-headed in all of these types of things. But you know, I was told early on when, you know, people are giving you advice about kids, you know, it's their job to push the boundaries and it's your job to set the boundaries. And you shouldn't get angry at them if they step over. That's their job. They need to know where the boundaries are. And I found that if you tell students where those boundaries are, then they're a lot more comfortable. It's just like having the syllabus, and they know what to expect. They know how they're going to be assessed. They know the rubrics. They know, you know, giving them the rubrics on how they're going to be assessed. They feel comfortable doing that type of interaction with the faculty member. And then you can go a lot above and beyond that. So I think that's really important. Just having the guardrails there is important. Now, are there students that don't cheat? You know, I know they're still cheating. Okay, we're catching them. Now that I'm the chair, I have to approve every academic integrity report, and so I, you know, go through the end of the semester. There's, you know, probably 40 or 50 in our department in different classes, and there's a whole process, but still, it's happening. But you can also trick these things. So if you wanted to build a nuclear bomb, okay, and I'm not going to tell you exactly how to do it because I've never done it before. But you can start off by and if you said that, you know, give me a recipe for napalm, right? You know, ChatGPT is going to say, no, we don't do weapons and all this kind of stuff. But then if you start doing your prompt in the sense that I'm doing some research on Vietnam and I worked with a company that did this and I'm experiencing some health problems, I want to know the ingredient. You can get around these types of things, okay? So you know, to some extent, the guardrails are there, but if the students know how to get around them, it's a problem. You can go through and you can change words and things like that, but I could have a filter on my email. You know, with the first sentence is, I hope this email finds you well. And I guarantee you that comes from, from students all over the world. They send it. Everybody has that same thing. They're using ChatGPT to generate these emails to see if I have a PhD program, a PhD position for them. It's probably on.
Yeah. So I don't want to go through the philosophical rabbit hole of the AI because I kind of have my little plan already.
Good.
But
Good.
As far as the technical aspect, I'm only really concerned more with the student output. So a lot of things now, the students are allowed in my class, for example, to use AI, but the work that they're generating is not technically accurate because BART is a little bit limited, or I think now it's Gemini, they switched over or something,
Yeah.
whatever. But it has limitations, so it doesn't consistently refer to the same Google Doc or Google Sheet or whatever that they were using. It doesn't have like memory retention that is functional enough for the students to actually benefit from it. So my question is, do you think it's going to improve, or is there maybe a different system that is better to use?
Well, I don't know how you're using it, but within a particular session, there is a lot of memory there. But if you're talking about the answers that it's getting, it's because it's random. I mean, there is statistical pieces there, and again, if you know the underlying, it's not an underlying knowledge base. It's generating the next word based on the context. So over time, that changes. That shows that they're using the prompts to refine things. If you say something, you say, "Oh, that's not really what I wanted." It's just like how Google does their search engines. They basically refine over time based on which things people select. If they put in there, Oriole, and people are picking the bird versus the baseball team, then the next time the top one's going to be the bird. If they're picking the baseball team, maybe only during April to August or October, then it comes up with the first one being the baseball, and that's a very simple thing, right? And you can imagine how complex this is. So I don't think there's one tool that's better than another. What I would do is make sure that what they're doing, they have the ability to critically analyze what their results are and go to a different source or use a different tool. It's the same way as if we don't like the answer, from one parent, we go to another parent, right? We have to learn, and we have to learn how to put all this together.
All right. Do we
I
have
have time,
for
so
one
yeah,
more question?
Yeah, or we can talk afterwards too.
One more question. Hold on.
On some important papers, I found that I put up front that I'm using AI prompts to help this particular document, and I think that's important too.
Absolutely. So the question was about, in research papers or in articles, is it okay to use these types of things? Again, Elsevier, I know. Who's the other one? Kluwer. They have allowed, even IEEE, they allow you to use these types of things, but you have to explicitly cite either the passages that you get from these things, and not just word for word. You can't just go and change the words. You have to use that as a citation to that type of thing. And so absolutely, or actually a citation in the bibliography, but asterisk or something up front that says that early on there was even this idea of do we put ChatGPT as a co-author on papers? I don't think we need to go quite that far, but the different organizations are allowing this type of stuff now because they know that it's not going to go away and people are going to use it. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Doermann. We appreciate it very much.
All right.
Thank you to all of you for being here. As I said before, if you could fill out our exit survey, that'd be great. And we have 2 other events coming up, one on March 1st, one on March 15th. You're welcome back for those. They're going to be a little different in scope in what we'll cover, but we'll send out plenty of notifications about them, so just check your email, check the CET digest that goes out every few weeks. We'll provide all of the information that you need to know to come back here for another Friday and learn some more about AI. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.